Hello and welcome to Raus IAS. This is the Daily News Simplified for the date 25 November 2023. So, for today's discussion, we will be going to see these following articles. For prelims discussion, we have selected three topics. These topics are sickle cell anemia, deep space optical communication, RTI exemptions to certain organizations. And for the mains discussion, we are going to deal with four topics. And these important topics are Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016. We will also see smart agriculture. And the other article deals with forgotten citizens, which is regarding the plight of migrant workers. And the final article would be regarding the mangrove forest or Sundarbans, especially with focus to Sundarban region in India. So now let's start our discussion for the day. Now, our first question for prelims discussion is inspired by this news article which appeared on the page number 15 of Indian Express, and this also appeared on the page number 10 of Indian Express, right? Now, this news article says that it is regarding a breakthrough, a genetic editing technology breakthrough which utilizes CRISPR-Cas9 technology, and it has been touted as a breakthrough in treating the sickle cell anemia, okay, and other blood related disorders. Now, why we have taken this question is that because in the science and tech section, UPSC has been asking questions regarding various diseases. As in the year 2021, we found this particular question, right, which was regarding hereditary diseases. Now, let's solve our first question, which says that with respect to sickle cell disease, consider the following statements. Now, our first statement is it is a genetic disorder characterized by the presence of abnormal bone marrow. Now, this is an incorrect statement. This is because sickle cell anemia is a genetic disorder, but it is characterized by the presence of abnormal hemoglobin, right? This genetic disorder is characterized by the presence of abnormal hemoglobin, and hemoglobin is a protein which is found in red blood cells, okay? And now let's see our second statement, which says that it changes red blood cells into round, flexible, and non-sticky cells. Now, this is also an incorrect statement. Now, what happens is that the red blood cells, which are important blood cells in any human and in any normal human, these red blood cells are round, flexible. And what is the work of RBCs, red blood cells? This is to transport oxygen from lungs to the various part of body, right? This is for transportation of oxygen and for removal of carbon dioxide, right? This is the primary work of RBCs. Now, what happens is that in any sickle cell anemia or a person suffering from this disease, it is a genetic disorder. And in this genetic disorder, there is an abnormality in a hemoglobin gene inside that person, right? And because of which, what happens is that the cells, the RBCs, which were originally round and flexible, they turned into sickle shaped. These RBCs have turned into sickle shaped or the crescent shape of moon, right? And because of this, what happens is that this shape presents an obstruction in the flow of blood in these blood vessels, right? And because of this, what happens is that firstly, there is an obstruction in the flow of blood, so there will be pain while passage of blood, right? So it is characterized by acute pain. Another thing is that as oxygen is vital for the functioning of any organ in the body, ultimately the person is going to die from organ failure, right? It is also characterized by various other ailments like stroke and other ailments, right? So this is all about sickle cell anemia. And you would be surprised by the fact that in India, annually, Indian records, the population of India records around 30,000 to 40,000 new cases of sickle cell anemia every year, right? And India has the second highest burden of sickle cell anemia in the world. And the sickle cell anemia, the prevalence of this disease is mostly found in the tribal belts of the country, right? And regarding this, the news article said that there is a, a genetic engineering technology which is CAS GEVY. This has been approved by United Kingdom, right? And this technology aims to cure the faulty gene line which is responsible for sickle cell disease. Okay, and this is regarding the genetic modification of the stem cells of the patients, right? And regarding this genetic modification, which will be done by the use of CRISPR Cas9 technology, which is an important genetic engineering technology you must be aware of. And by utilizing this technology, the faulty gene line will be cured, and the person, and this would be a one time treatment, and the person would be cured of sickle cell disease. However, is a this treatment is evolving, right? And it is yet to be approved by other nations also, like US FDA and other nations. And this is presently at the stage of development and a costlier treatment, right? And we will see in future for the treatment to evolve and to become more affordable for its utilization by the populations of the globe, right? So this was regarding our first MCQ. Now let's move on to the second MCQ for the day, which is inspired by this news article which appeared. This news article also appeared on the page number 15 of Indian Express, and this news article is regarding a deep space optical communication which has been taken place, which has been successfully executed by NASA, right? Now let's understand more about this topic. Now, why we have taken this topic is that UPSC in the science and tech section has been asking questions regarding various developments in the fields of IT, in the fields of communications, in the fields of space technology. And now this is an amalgamation of advancement in the field of communications as well as in the field of space technology. Now let us solve this question, right? Now this question says, consider the following statements about the NASA's deep space optical communication. Okay, now let's see the statements. The first statement says it is NASA's first demonstration of optical communication beyond the Earth Moon system. Now, this is a correct statement, as NASA's deep space optical communication is the first demonstration of optical communication beyond the Earth Moon system. We will see this in detail. And the second statement is it utilizes the ultraviolet range of the electromagnetic spectrum instead of radio waves. This is an incorrect statement, as deep space optical communication utilized near infrared radiation, right? It did not utilize ultraviolet spectrum. Now let's understand basic nuances of this news article, right? Now this, as you must be aware of, is electromagnetic spectrum. This consists of the spectrum, or this consists of all the ranges of frequencies and wavelength of all the electromagnetic radiations, right? Now if we see from left hand side, we can see radio waves. As we move to the right hand side, we can see radio waves, microwaves, infrared radiation, then we see visible light, then we see ultraviolet light, X-rays and gamma waves. So as we move from the left hand side of this spectrum to the right hand side, what do we observe is that the wavelength of these radiations decrease, right? The wavelength of radio waves is higher, is the wavelength of radio wave is the longest, right? And the wavelength of gamma waves is the minimum, it's minimum, okay, the smallest. And at the same time, wavelength is inversely proportional to frequency or energy. So that's why the gamma waves have highest energy or highest frequency, right? And radio waves have longest wavelength. So these are the basic facts regarding electromagnetic spectrum. Now, as in this question, we saw that the name, what is this mission about? This is NASA's Deep Space Optical Communication. Now we see a term here which is optical communication. Now, if we talk about the communication between the satellite system, generally what do we see? We hear of this communication, which is radio communication. Okay, so this communication takes place by utilizing the radio waves. Okay, so now what are the nuances or the basics of this communication? This is the Earth surface, right? So basically there is a transmitter, this is a satellite, right? And this is a receiver. So radio waves are transmitted to the satellite at a particular wavelength, okay? And this satellite, what does it do? It processes the data, it amplifies the signal, and then it transmits the signal back to a receiver. This is a transmitter and this is a receiver. So this is how radio communication takes place between satellites. But now what NASA did, it did the first successful demonstration of optical communication between satellites. Now in this communication, radio waves were not used, but infrared waves were used in this communication, okay? And if we talk about optical communication, it generally refers to communication using visible range of light, right? Or by using infrared radiations, right? By using the spectrum in the infrared range or in the visible range, right? So in this communication, what NASA did was, NASA, in place of radio waves, this communication was executed with the help of laser lights, okay? And this was in the range of IR, infrared radiations, near infrared radiations. Now what is the advantage of this kind of communication? Why did NASA actually did it? Now this is because this was to develop state of art communication or more advanced communications as compared to radio communications. Now this chart is a basic difference between radio communication and optical communication. Now apart from other differences, the major difference is that optical communications provide a very high bandwidth. So what is bandwidth? Bandwidth is the amount of data that can be transmitted per unit time. Okay. So larger is the bandwidth, larger is the amount of data transmitted per unit time. So because of higher bandwidth of optical communication, this will offer more bits per second, right? So the communication of optical, it would be up to several terabytes per second as compared to several gigabytes per second of radio communication. The first difference is very high bandwidth or very high speed, which is necessary for advanced communications, right? And also apart from higher speed, what is the second advantage? It is lower attenuation. Attenuation means loss of signals, loss of strength of the signals as they travel, right? Now see, what happens is that in the case of radio communication, as we already saw, the wavelength of radio waves is too high, right? And because of the higher wavelength, what happens is that it is prone to more attenuation or to loss of the signals, and it is also prone to more electromagnetic interference, right? And which is not desirable in any communication. And for that matter, what do we use? It is advisable to use an advanced form of communication, which in future may be optical communications, as they have low attenuation or low signal loss, right? And they could be suitable for long distance transmission without using repeaters. Repeaters are devices which are used to amplify the signal strength, right? And also they are immune to electromagnetic interference, right? So this was what happened in this deep space optical communication mission by NASA, right? So as the question asked, which of the statement given above is or are correct? So our correct statement would be option A, one only, right? Now let's move on to our final MCQ for the day, which is inspired by this article which appeared on the page number 8 of The Hindu. Now this article says that the central government or the union government has added the Computer Emergency Response Team, CERT-IN, among the list of organizations which are exempted from the ambit of Right to Information Act, right? Now, we know that UPSC has repeatedly asked questions regarding various regulatory bodies. These bodies could be statutory bodies or non-statutory bodies or other organizations, right? Now, Computer Emergency Response Team, CERT-IN, is a regulatory body, right? So let's solve MCQ regarding it. The first statement says that CERT-IN is an independent body under the Ministry of Home Affairs. Now, this is an incorrect statement as this is an independent body, as CERT is an independent body or a regulatory body under MITI, Ministry of Information and Technology. Okay, and CERT-IN is a nodal agency in India which is responsible for reporting or which deals with the incidents of cybercrime in the country. Okay, so it is an apex body regarding the incidents of cybercrime. Now, let's solve the second statement which says that CERT-IN has been designed as the nodal agency to represent India in the Budapest Convention on Cybercrimes. Now, see, this is an incorrect statement. Why? Because if we talk about Budapest Convention, this is an international convention and which deals to streamline the cybersecurity laws of majority nations in the world, right? But India is not a signatory to the Budapest Convention. Okay, so this statement would be incorrect as India is not signatory to this convention. Okay, and now let's talk about third statement which says that it is the only CERT-IN is the only agency which is exempted from the purview of Right to Information Act. Now this is an incorrect statement, right? Now why? The right to information under the Right to Information Act, the RTI applicants can gather some information regarding various public organizations, right? But there are certain organizations which are exempted from this ambit of RTI. Okay, and this is provided by the second schedule of RTI Act 2005. And this schedule deals with the list of organizations which are exempted from the purview of Right to Information Act. And there are 27 organizations which are exempted from this purview. You not need to know about all the organizations or to memorize all the organizations, but you should know some important organizations which are exempted from the purview of this act. These organizations are Intelligence Bureau, RAW Research and Analysis Wing, Directorate of Revenue Intelligence, NTRO, DRDO, CERT-IN. And CERT-IN is the latest addition in this list. And this was the news all about. That CERT is the latest addition in the second schedule of Right to Information Act 2005. Right? So, as the question asked, which of the above statement is or are incorrect? Right? So, our answer would be option D, 1, 2, and 3. All these statements are incorrect. Okay. Now, this was all regarding the prelims discussion. Now, let's move on to our mains articles for the day. We have chosen 4 mains articles. Now, let's quickly see these articles. The first article for the day is inspired by this news article which appeared on The Hindu, right? And this news article is regarding a recently released report by CRISIL. And this report says that the recovery under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code of India 2016 has fallen for the period between March 2019 to the period between September 2023. So, in approximately 3.5 or say 4 years, the recovery of the stressed assets or the recovery under this IBC law has fallen from 43% to 32%, right? And the average resolution time under this law, under this code, has risen from 324 days to 653 days. So, this is regarding the ineffective implementation of insolvency and bankruptcy code in the country, right? So, in this article, we will see some nuances about this act and we will also see what are the challenges because of which there is delay in the resolution in respect to insolvency and bankruptcy code in the country, right? Now, why we have taken this article is that this is important for our GS paper 3 economic development. This is important under the syllabus head which is Indian economy and issues related to planning, mobilization of resources, growth, development and employment, and especially under the subhead which is mobilization of resources, right? Now let's see this article. I think there is some technical issue. Okay. Now let's see Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016, right? Now, first of all, what do we mean by insolvency? Insolvency is a condition under which a debtor or a company is unable to pay its debt, right? And what is bankruptcy? Bankruptcy is when this condition of this individual or this company is legally defined, right? That is legal recognition of insolvency is known as bankruptcy. So there is a little bit or a hairline difference between these two terms, right? Now, why do we need insolvency and bankruptcy code for the first place? Now, for the country, we know that if we want to promote ease of doing business in the country, right? So what are the key components of ease of doing business? The first thing is the entry of any individual or any company into any business. This is the first thing. And what should be the second thing? This should be the smoother the entry, and if that company falls short of any condition, if that company wants to accumulates debt, or if that company wants to exit from the marketplace, there should be a strong exit, there should be a smooth exit of that company from that marketplace, right? And these two, the smooth entry and smooth facilitation of exit, are the key tenets of ease of doing business, among other factors, right? Now, in India, what happened was that earlier there were frameworks for exit of a for debt resolution of any company, or for exit of a company from any from the economy or from the marketplace, right? For this there were several mechanisms like debt recovery tribunal. We had a Surface Act 2002, right? But despite having these mechanisms, they failed to ease the process of resolution of debt, or liquid or liquidation of the assets of that company, right? So the process of debt resolution or liquidation became was not effective under the previous frameworks. Now, for 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 to facilitate it, what India did was, in the year 2016, India adopted an insolvency and bankruptcy code. Okay, and this was to create a single and comprehensive framework which had two important criteria. First was to provide a time bound. Note this point, time bound. And another was to facilitate a cost effective process for resolving insolvency and bankruptcy of the companies or individuals also, but basically companies, right? But we saw as earlier in the news that the time bound process, the average resolution time of insolvency and bankruptcy in the country, despite having IBC since the year 2016, right, has risen from 324 days to 653 days. Nearly the time, the resolution time has doubled, right? So, this is because of several challenges which this code is facing. Okay, but before this, let us first understand some processes regarding what is the criteria to assess this debt resolution process. Now, for this, what happens is that any there would be an application which has to be filed to NCLT. NCLT is National Company Law Tribunal. Now, in this institution, in this tribunal, an application has to be filed by any debtor, a person, a debtor company. Okay, it could be filed by any creditor, or it could be filed by any employee of that company which is in debt. Okay, so basically these three people, that is the debtor or the original company which is in debt, or the creditors from which the company has taken loans, right? Also, the employee of that company which is in debt can file an application to NCLT, right? And now what happens is that NCLT will have its review mechanism based on which it could either accept the application for resolution of debt, or it can reject the application. Now, if the resolution application is accepted, then what happens is that a moratorium is applied, which is that when this application is accepted, there is a ban or a stay on legal proceedings which will be happening on that debtor company, or there could be no legal proceedings on that debtor company until the application is in process with NCLT, right? And then what happens is that an insolvency professional is appointed by NCLT. Okay. So this, what does this professional do? This insolvency professional chalks out a insolvency resolution plan. Okay. And then this resolution plan, which is which gives an idea, which is a plan regarding the revival of that company, which is in that, which may also be regarding which may also give advice to sell some assets, which may be basically regarding to revive that debtor company, right? And this plan of action could be accepted. This plan of action either can be accepted by that company, right? Or either it could be rejected. Now, if the plan of action is rejected or it is failed to be approved by the committee of creditors of that particular company, okay, if the committee of creditors of that particular company, if they fail to approve this plan, this debt resolution plans, then what happens is that within 330 days the company will be liquidated. That is, the assets of that company would be sold, and then whatever the proceeds will come, it will be divided to the creditors, okay, or the NPA or the loans of the creditors, they would recover their loans, right? So this is briefly what is the process of liquidation and bankruptcy. Now, despite having this mechanism, this process faces several challenges. Now let's discuss what are the challenges. The first thing, as it was highlighted in the article itself, there is delay in the resolution process. Now earlier, when this code was adopted in the year 2016, the time frame which was envisaged for this resolution was 180 days, and further it was given 90 days extension. But later it was revised to 330 days. But now we see that ideally this time of 330 days has also doubled. Okay. Now why is there delay in the dispute resolution? This is because there is a lack of dedicated NCLT benches or tribunal benches for the application. As we saw earlier, these NCLT cases accept the application for resolution of debt, right? And there is a lack of dedicated NCLT benches in the country. Okay. And because of which there is a pending backlog of cases. Okay, this is the first factor. And what is the second factor? The second factor is that there is delay in consensus building. There is delay in consensus among the committee of creditors. See, what is committee of creditors? In case there is a company and it has taken loan from multiple creditors, right? Then those multiple creditors will form a committee, right? Which will decide how the plan of action is to be taken forward. Now, sometimes what happens, because there are multiple creditors, there may be a delay in building a consensus regarding how to move forward with a resolution plan. And because of this delay in consensus, what will happen? There will be the erosion or devaluation of the assets of debtor. As we know that any loan, any non-performing asset, its value is going to deteriorate further as the time passes, right? And because of this time which is lost in consensus building, there is a delay in chalking out an effective plan of resolution, right? And because of which there is a devaluation of assets of the debtor. So this is the first challenge, which is delay in the resolution process. Okay. Now, there is another thing, which is there is shortage of insolvency professionals. So these were the professionals which chalked out a resolution plan, right? But in India, there is itself the delay of insolvency professionals, right? And also there is a shortage of infrastructure to manage this insolvency process. And sometimes what happened that the debtor company, uh, uh, it may expound pressure over these insolvency professionals, and because of this undue pressure from the debtor company, there could be delay in verification of claims or delay in the submission of resolution plans. Okay, and this may also result in unfair valuation of the price of businesses because of some kind of pressure, undue pressure on these insolvency professionals. So the key word is there is shortage of insolvency professionals, there is shortage of proper infrastructure, and these insolvency professionals may be under undue pressure, and which may also affect this resolution process, right? Other issue is that there is there are large haircuts on the loans, and which may disincentivize which may disincentivize the initiation of the resolution process. Now, there is a data by the Parliamentary Standing Committee for the year 2021. This data says that in the 5 years of operation of Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, the creditors had to bear 80% haircut in more than 70% of the cases. Now, what is haircut means is that, for example, there is 100 crore, for example, the creditors are expecting 100 crores of liquidation assets, right? After liquidation, they are expecting that they would get around 100 crore rupees, okay? But because of all these processes, or because of going through this insolvency and resolution process, there are significant haircuts. Like if we say that a creditor has to bear 80% haircut, then this means that the creditor which was expecting 100 crore of rupees after the resolution process is only going to get 20 crore of rupees. Okay? Now because of which what happens is that they are disincentivized to initiate the resolution process. Okay? Because of this large haircuts. And now another issue is implementation of some resolution plan may need government approvals. Now in case the debtor company, they are involved in some public private plans or private partnerships with government. For example, any debtor company is involved in some PPP partnership with the government, in some say in banking sector, say in telecom or in mining sector, okay, where there is government stakeholders also, where government is a stakeholder also. And in that case, since government approval is required to initiate the debt resolution process, right? In that case, because there is a need for government approval, there would be delay in starting the implementation plan. Okay. So this is one of the issue which is involved, which adds to the challenges of this process. And finally, the other factor is that there is no strict liability for directors or the debtors which are willfully delaying or concealing insolvency. There are certain cases also that there are certain firms in the country which are insolvent, but they do not declare their insolvency due to fear from certain repercussions or due to fear from liquidation of their assets, right? In that process also, if it is found out, there is no strict liability in this insolvency and bankruptcy code regarding those directors, right? So basically, these are the challenges which hamper this process. Now let's see what is the way forward in this regard. As we saw that there is a shortage of NCLT benches. So the first thing is that India needs to set up dedicated benches for NCLT for IBC cases. Okay. And India needs to enhance their institutional capacity. The first thing is that. And the second thing is that as we saw that NCLT, an application has to be filed to NCLT. And NCLT, after reviewing that application, either can reject it or can accept it, right? But there are significant delays from the side of NCLT to accept these applications, right? So the other way forward is that NCLT should take not more than 30 days after filing to admit insolvency application and transfer control of the company to resolution process. Between these two, between the application is filed and between the resolution process is initiated, the time should be less than 30 days, not more than 30 days, right? And the other thing is that for IBCs, as we saw that for resolution personals, right? For insolvency professionals, there should be a certain, there should be, sorry, there should be a certain code of conduct for these insolvency resolution professionals, and obviously their number should be increased because there is also shortage of these insolvency professionals, and there should be more transparency in their selections, right, to avoid any circumstances of misuse of their power by these insolvency professionals. Also, the areas of misuse of powers by these insolvency professionals should be identified, and then there should be a strict remedial action regarding this in the code itself, right, or some code should be amended or modified in this aspect. So this was all regarding our first topic, which was regarding insolvency and bankruptcy. Now let's move on to our second topic for the day, which is regarding this news article which appeared on Indian Express in the editorial section. Now, this news article is regarding the need for climate smart agriculture in the country. Okay. Now, why this article is important? This is important for our GS paper 3 environment. Now, this is important under environmental conservation, right? That why do we need climate smart agriculture in India? Now, let's start the discussion of this topic. Climate smart agriculture. Now, if we talk about India, India has a population of around 1.4 billion people, right? And the what are the main problems which India has in its hand? The first thing is the problem to feed 1.4 billion population, right? That is to ensure food security in the country. Though presently there is food security in the country, but still in the nearby future, and also because of the large geographical extent of the country, and because of the climate vagaries, because of the extreme climate events which are becoming more frequent, like heat waves, cyclones, and various other droughts, okay, frequent droughts, and flash floods. There are various environmental phenomena which are becoming more extreme, right? And in that sense, India has to ensure food security, right? India has to ensure climate resilience to the agricultural sector, right? And because of the extreme climate events, okay? So now, so in that sense, India has to move from the traditional agricultural practices to the climate smart agricultural practices, right? Now, for example, if we see the green revolution of 1960s, so what we saw in 1916 is that the food production of the country increased, right? And now because of green revolution, India moved towards food security, right? But what were the consequences of such type of revolution? The consequences were, we saw enormous resource depletion. We saw it had enormous impact on resources like water, the depletion of groundwater, okay? And we saw the alkalization of soil, the soil salinity, or the degradation of soil, the resource degradation in the form of water, in the form of soil, in the form of microorganism or the biota which is present in the soil. So it was not sustainable. Such kind of agricultural revolution or practices are not sustainable, right? So in that sense, we should adopt certain technologies which are climate smart, and this approach is needed to transform food and agricultural systems to support sustainable development and to safeguard food security under the threat of climate change. Now, under this backdrop, we should understand that climate smart agriculture has three pillars. Now, what are these three pillars? The first thing is mitigation. Mitigation means that the agriculture should be such that there should be less greenhouse gases emissions. There should be less, like you know that the agriculture sector, it is a major emitter of methane and carbon dioxide also, okay? Now in case of greenhouse revolution, what we saw that it also led to the enormous release of greenhouse gases, okay? Green revolution, it also resulted in the enormous release of greenhouse gases. So the first pillar is mitigation, or the to lower the greenhouse gases emissions, okay? But at the same time, if we need to adopt such practices, our productivity should not decline, right? because we have to feed 1.4 billion population, and India is also major exporter of food grains, right? And in that sense, the productivity of agriculture should not be compromised. Okay, and this is also important because India has major shareholding. India is an agrarian economy, and the major shareholding of farmers is with marginal or small small farmers. India has majority of small and marginal farmers, right? And in that case, to ensure the income of those farmers is also important, right? We cannot force, for example, we cannot force organic farming on farmers, because that could be detrimental to the productivity, right? That could be detrimental to the income gains of those farmers, could be because of lower productivity or lower production as compared to hybrid seeds, or as compared to other crops, right? So climate smart agriculture means that the agriculture should have the component of mitigation, but at the same time it should not compromise on productivity. And the final component is adaptation. That is, we should employ such agricultural technique that should adapt with the climate change, right? The technology should be climate resilient. Okay, so these three are the pillars of climate smart agriculture. I hope you understood it. Now, if we talk about the dimensions of such kind of agriculture, we should know that what are such techniques. The first thing is effective utilization of the resources, for which an important resource in agriculture is water, right? So we should use such technologies which are water smart. Now, this could be done either by traditional methods or by utilization of technologies or advancement in science and technologies, right? Now, the basic thing is to increase the soil's capacity to absorb and store moisture. Okay, this is known as green water. Green water is the water available under the soil and which could be utilized by the plants or by the microorganism, right? So we have to improve the green water, right? So we have to increase the soil's capacity to absorb and store moisture. That is, we have to increase the fertility of the soil also in that respect. And this can be done by rainwater harvesting. There are various methods. This can be done by reusing wastewater, and this can be done by investment in smart irrigation techniques, or by improving the existing irrigation techniques, like by lining of the water in the water canals, right? By reducing the wastage of water, by smart irrigation techniques like drip agriculture, right? By precision agriculture, right? By using sprinklers, that is, by the uses of traditional technology and by the uses of science and technology. Okay, now the other thing is that the agriculture should be weather smart. That is, the agriculture should be suitable to the various agroclimatic zones of the country, for which there should be the zoning. There should be mapping of the agroclimatic zones in the country, and based on particular zones, but the crop should be advised to be planted to that zones. For example, sugarcane, which is a water guzzling crops, it should be gradually phased out or gradually reduced from the northern belts, right? Because the northern belts are already deprived of water. The water level is too low, right? And these crops, the crop should be advised according to the agroclimatic zone. And in that sense, there should be promotion of crops like millets. There should be promotion of crops like drought tolerant species of crops, right? So weather smart agriculture, utilizing the various aspects of agroclimatic zones. Okay, the another thing is that the agriculture should be energy smart. That is, by the integration of renewable energy sources to meet the energy demand of the farmers. Now these renewable energy sources could be by utilizing wind pumps, or by utilizing wind power, or by using solar pumps. An important scheme in this regard is PM Kusum scheme, that provides loans or subsidies for the installation of solar pumps, right? So this is by energy smart technology, by utilizing energy smart technology, right? Finally, the technique should be carbon smart. That is, the carbon smart technology like no-till farming. No-till farming is by using drillers or by minimal disturbance in the soil cover, right? And this is and this prevents the release of greenhouse gases. Okay. And by the promotion of agroforestry is by planting trees along with crops, right, along the corners of fields, and this is important for carbon sequestration. Okay, so there should be carbon smart practices like no-till farming, agroforestry, crop rotation. We all know benefits of crop rotation by increasing the fertility of the soil, right, and by diversification of the crops, which also serves the same purpose. Crop mulching, right, organic farming. So these all techniques can prevent soil erosion, and on the other hand, they will improve the fertility of the soil, and finally, as these are carbon smart practices, they will enhance the carbon sequestration. Okay, so these are some of the dimensions of carbon smart agriculture. Now, as the article says that India need for climate smart agriculture. Why does India needs climate smart agriculture? The thing is that food security, as we already discussed, that India houses around 1.4 billion population, right, and the demand for food grains is going to be increased in future only, and because the weather events in the country have become more frequent, and because of which, if the traditional farming is continued in the country, there could be significant loss to the productivity of farming, right? So in that sense, to maintain food security or to ensure food security, there is a need for climate smart agriculture. Okay, now the second component is to reduce the yield loss. Okay, now as I already discussed above, that owing to the climate change, it is estimated that the crop yield decline, that is the decline in the productivity of crop, is would be as high as 9% as estimated between 2010 to 2039. Okay, because of extreme climate events. So to reduce this yield loss, there is a need to adopt climate smart agriculture. Another thing is to enhance resource efficiency. As we already discussed, what are the resources in agriculture? Soil, water, right? Microbiota. So, for proper utilization of existing resources or for the sustainable use of these resources, there is a need for climate smart agriculture, right? And to combat the adverse impact of climate change, obviously. Also, to meet the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We know that the UN Sustainable Goals are the targets which the countries have to be achieved, with the targets have to be achieved till the year 2030. And one of the important target of this Sustainable Development Goal is to end hunger. This is Sustainable Development Goal 2. So, in order to ensure this target and in order to ensure climate in order to control climate change, right, this is Sustainable Development Goal target 13. So in order to meet these sustainable development goals, there is a need to adopt climate smart agriculture, and further to meet international obligations like India has Paris agreement, right, and climate smart, by adopting climate smart agriculture could be one of the methods by which India could achieve this goal, right? So, and there is a way forward which is given in this article, and which these consist of the techniques which we have already discussed, and you can read this way forward to enhance your understanding, right? And since we are running out of time, I would proceed to a third article, right? The third article is regarding the forgotten citizens. This article appeared on the editorial section of Indian Express, and this article is about forgotten citizens, or it is regarding the plight of migrant workers in the country. Okay, now why this article is important? This is important for our GS paper to social justice, and this is important because migrant workers are the component, or they are the vulnerable sections in the country, right? And for them, this is important under the welfare schemes for vulnerable sections, and migrant workers are also vulnerable sections, right? So let's begin this discussion. Now, before this, what is migration? Migrant workers, we talk about migrant workers. What is migration? It is the geographic movement of people across a specified boundary, and this could be because of social, economic, or political reasons. Now, in India, if we talk about internal migration, where does it happen? It happens from one village to other village. It may happen from one village to from rural area to urban areas. Okay, urban migration. and it may also happen from one state to another state, right? State to state. It may happen from a, a underdeveloped village to another village. It may happen from a village to urban area, or from one state to another state. Okay, so all this kind of migration which is happening inside the geographical boundary of India is known as internal migration. Okay, now as per the estimates of census 2011, the latest census, the number of internal migrants in the country is around 46 crores, or they form 37% of country's population, which is a huge number, right? Now, what are the factors for migration? Why are these people migrating? So there are push factors from it. Push factors means which which forces these people to migrate from one place to other place. And there are pull factors also. What are pull factors? Which attracts these people to these particular places. Now let's talk about push factors. The first and foremost thing is lack of employment in any particular place. Now to gain employment, okay, to improve their social mobility, what do these people do is to migrate to the places where they can get proper employment opportunities. Now in India, what happened that since majorly since the LPG reform of 1991, more focus was given to the manufacturing sector and to the services sector, because of which more job opportunities, employment opportunities were created in the urban areas, right? And which was one of the major factors which propelled migration. And this was regarding the new economic opportunities which were presented in cities, right? And this is one of the major factors for migration in tier 1 cities. Okay, and there is a noticeable trend in migration in the country, that since the economic development of the cities, particularly in the western region of India and in the southern region of India, has been more as compared to the northern region, to the central India, and to the northeast India. So majority of internal migration happens to the western regions of India or to the southern regions of India. Okay, so these are the major trends of migration in the country. Now we were talking about factors of migration. So one of the major factor is employment. People can also migrate because of caste discrimination. Now what happens is that because of caste discrimination, people want to people want social mobility, and they don't want to stay in the same caste based employment which is provided in their village or at their place. So to end this discrimination, this social discrimination, it is also one factor why they move out of their place. Also, they people also move out in search of better livelihood, better basic amenities like sanitation, health, and they are also forced to move out because of natural disasters like cyclone, landslide, floods. Okay, so these are certain push factors. If we talk about pull factors, these are better job opportunities, better livelihood and healthcare facilities, right? Urban lifestyle, free and liberty and liberal and free society, right? Quality education is also one of the factors, right? And industrial ecosystem, of course. So these are the basic factors of migration. Now we see that there are general trends of migration in the country, but as the article itself said that um, article said article was the forgotten citizens. Okay, that these citizens, despite forming 37% of population of the country, a huge chunk of population, these citizens are forgotten, right? That the state agencies or they are not giving any thought to the plight of these people, right? So what are the certain challenges which internal migrants face? Let us see these challenges. The first thing is exclusion from welfare schemes. Now why these people are excluded from welfare scheme? Because there is no official data which accounts for the exact number or the exact mobility or the exact origin or the exact residence or employment or any kind of data related to the internal migrants in the country, right? So because of this, because lack of appropriate data or comprehensive data, these people are excluded from welfare benefits. And generally what happens is that the welfare benefits by the state governments are associated with the place of origin of these residents. Now these people are not living at their place of origin, but they are moving to other states, so they may also lack their identity or digital documents, right? And because of which they may be excluded from welfare schemes. Earlier, one such example was the migrants were not able to access food grains under the PDS system, public distribution system, because of lack of identity, lack of verification of their identity, right? So the thing is, they can be excluded from welfare schemes. Okay. Now the second thing is, these migrant workers, they are prone to discrimination. Now this discrimination can be on the basis of language, ethnicity, or cultural differences, right? And because of this, it leads to social isolation and deprival, and they are deprived of essential services, right? The next thing is, since migrants are a highly diverse group, okay, so they do not have a collective bargaining power, okay, and that's why they are susceptible to exploitation. And this is also compounded by the fact that the migrant people in the country are politically excluded, okay. So the migrant people, they have no political power, or they cannot exercise their voting power, okay. So in that aspect, what happens is that they are the accountability of the politicians is not set regarding the migrant workers, okay. So in that case, they do not have a collective bargaining power, and they are excluded of their political rights, okay. Now they are often, in case of employment, they move outside their states, and generally they live in substandard housing conditions, and where there is a lack of clean water, or there is a lack of sanitation facilities, and because of which there is a threat of spreading waterborne diseases, and this leads to health issues, and subsequently health issues, and more out of pocket expenditure, right? And this is compounded with the fact that, as majority of these migrant workers, majority, they are informal workforces, okay, and majority of them are employed in construction sites, and because of which there is lack of social safety. That is, they don't have any healthcare benefits, they don't have any insurance benefits, okay, or any social security net retirement plans, and because of which they are vulnerable to the exploitment. And they also, and because they are employed in informal workforces, they receive minimal wages, right? Low wages, which are, they receive low wages, and which are way less than the minimum wages, which are, which should be there, okay, which are prescribed by the government or whatever, related to any particular, which in ideal condition should be minimum wages, right? And another important issue is that, because of frequent relocations of these people from one state to another, this is also one of the issue why there is not an official data, because these people, because of frequent relocation of these people, right, migrants, and this also hampers the access to education for their children. Like, they are suffering, but the next generation which is coming, they are also susceptible to such kind of future, okay, such kind of blight in future. So what government of India did was, in the year 1979, India enacted an Interstate Migrant Workmen Regulation of Employment and Condition of Service Act in the year 1979. This was to protect these migrant workers, and basically this was an act regarding the payment of minimum wages to them, equal payment at par with local workers for similar work, payment of journey allowance, suitable accommodation, or to prevent such people from, in general, any kind of discrimination. It also included maternity benefit, among others, right? So you may think that there is an act regarding there is an act in India to protect these migrant workers, right? So an important aspect of this act is that, as per this act, the migrant workers must be registered with the district magistrate before being employed. Now, do you think these conditions are being employed in the country? Why? Because if the migrant workers, if they fulfill this criteria, in the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw that there was no data. There was no data in the country regarding how many migrant people, regarding migrant people. Okay. So this condition that before being employed any contract, okay, migrant workers must be registered with the district magistrate. So this shows that there are various implementation issue. There is an compliance or implementation issue regarding this act, right? And which leads to, and which is one of the factors that, despite having such act which lays down on paper good solutions, this act is not effective, or this is not instrumental in catering to their rights, okay, in catering to the plight of migrant workers. Okay, so because of implementation issue. Now, what is the way forward in this regard? The way forward is that to promote social integration, as we saw that migrant workers are prone to social discrimination. So by promoting social integration or by cultural exchange or understanding between migrant workers and local communities, these incidences of discrimination could be minimized. Okay, by updating a database which is reflective of the changing circumstances of these migrant workers, it would be easier to notice the mobility pattern of these migrant workers, right? This means by having a database of these migrant workers, which should be updated time and again, timely, right? And in this regard, there were some recommendations by Niti Aayog. What Niti Aayog said was that there should be political inclusion of migrant workers, okay? And because of political inclusion of migrant workers, they can demand their entitlements. Another thing is that there should be some interstate coordination mechanism, right? There are certain states in India, say for example the states like Maharashtra, the states like Telangana, where there is high influx of migrant workers, right? So, and there are some states of the India where there is high outflux, like states like Bihar, Jharkhand. There are certain other states also from where people migrate in a large number, right? So there should be an interstate coordination mechanism between source states and destination states in this regard, right? Regarding this data mechanism. Now, for this, the Ministry of Labor and Employment should set up a special unit for migrant workers, which can manage migration resource centers. There should be a centers, migration resource centers, which could handle this traffic or this data regarding these migrant workers, right? And there should be a national labor helpline which could be functional such that these migrants can use it in case of redressal of any issues they are facing. In case they are facing any exploitation or any other issue, they can use this helpline, right? And also there can be creation of night shelters, short stay homes or seasonal accommodation for migrant workers in cities. Okay, now having seen way forward, now let us see, there are not always negatives, there are some positives also. Now let us see the positives. What are the positives? In recent years, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic, when there was a heavy focus on the plight of these workers, government has taken some initiatives, some really good initiatives in this regard, I would say. So the first such initiative is eShram portal. This portal was launched by the government in the year 2021, and this portal aims to create a national database of unorganized workers in the country. That is, there would be a database that would include migrant workers, construction workers, gig and platform workers, street vendors, domestic workers, agriculture, and other organized workers. That is, finally, there would be a national database of unorganized workers in the country, right? Another important scheme is Samadhan portal, which was also launched in the same year, and this is a portal to address the grievances of these workers, right? And such grievances could be through these grievances could include illegal termination of these workers, delayed payments, or unauthorized deductions in the wages of these workers. That is regarding any kind of grievances with which these unorganized workers are facing. Okay. Another important scheme by the government is One Nation, One Ration Card. Now, mostly all the states of India have adopted One Nation, One Ration Card. So under this, what happens is that the migrant workers, the eligible beneficiaries of migrant workers are also eligible to assess their food entitlements from anywhere in the country, right? It so they any migrant workers can assess food entitlement in the place of its residence by utilizing this facility of One Nation, One Ration Card, right? And under the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Urban, affordable rental housing complexes are being developed to give a good a good accommodation, affordable accommodation, and good livelihood and good sanitation conditions to these migrant workers, right? Under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Urban. Also, Code on Social Security 2020 was one of the four labor reforms in the country, right? This broadens the definition of an employee. Now, under this Code on Social Security 2020, employee may also mean an informal employee, right? So this also establishes a social security fund for informal gig and platform workers, right? And also now we know these are the facilities for migrant workers. But now we also need that these workers do not migrate from their home states or from their from their source states at the first place, right? And to prevent or to slow to prevent migration of workers from their source states, there should be sustainable employment opportunities for them. So in that sense, Pradhan Mantri Street Vendors Atmanirbhar Nidhi or Pradhan Mantri Swanidhi scheme was launched in the year 2020, and this is to provide affordable capital loans to street vendors such that they can engage in entrepreneurial activities, right, of their level at their home state itself. Okay. And now, as we saw that these migrant workers do not have any political power, now in that sense, the Election Commission of India is planning to roll out remote voting plan for the migrants. Now currently it is in the position of creation, right? This is a recommendation, and Election Commission of India is finding the mechanism, or it is rolled out, or there are some pilot runs of this scheme, but this has not been rolled out currently, right? But there are plans for remote voting to these migrants, right? And this will enable their political representation. Okay. So these are some government schemes, and why the proper implementation of this government scheme is important for these for the welfare of migrant workers, of course, and also for meeting the Sustainable Development Goal 8, which is regarding the decent work conditions, which is regarding the decent employment of the people in the country. Okay. So this is also important to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 8. Okay. Now finally, we will quickly see this article which appeared on the page on this article appeared on Indian Express. Now this article is regarding the Sundarban Delta, right? It is regarding the Sundarban Delta. And this article is important because this is important for our GS paper 1, World Geography, under the changes in critical geographical features. As we know, it is regarding mangrove forest, right? And we know that any critical geographical feature, mangrove forest, they're also a part of critical geographical feature in the country, and there may be changes on these critical geographical features by the impact of climate change or other factors, right? By anthropogenic reasons also. And this article is also important for our GS paper 3 environment, right? Now let's quickly see this article. Now first of all, let's see what are mangroves. So what are mangroves? Mangroves are halophytes, or they are salt tolerant species of plants. Okay, salt tolerant species of plants. And where are they found? They are found in the intertidal zones. Intertidal zones means in between the high tides, between the area, intertidal zones are the area between high tides and low tides. Okay, so mangroves are found in the intertidal zones in the tropical and subtropical countries. So this map here shows the distribution of these mangroves. These are located in this coastal areas, right? Now, how are these mangroves? Now, as we see that mangroves are often found in the water-logged, low oxygen conditions, right? Water logging, we can say, and low oxygen conditions. Now, these mangrove, because of their ecological adaptations, like what are these ecological adaptations? Pneumatophores. First thing is pneumatophores. Pneumatophores are the root systems of mangroves. These floating roots, you can see in this figure. These are the floating roots, or floating not. These are the aerial roots. These are the aerial or vertical roots of mangroves. Okay, and because of which these lateral roots or vertical roots, mangroves are able to intake oxygen from air, and because of these roots itself, they are able to take nutrients from the air. Okay, so this is one of the adaptability of these pneumatophores, is one of the reasons why mangroves are able to take oxygen in oxygen stressed water lost conditions, right? Another thing is these buttress roots or plank roots of mangroves. Buttress means providing support. Now we know that there is buttress roots means mangrove is a shallow tree and its roots are expanded to a large region. And because of this, what happens that it provides support to the mangrove. Mangrove technically floats on the sea level, and because of this support system of these roots expanded to a wide area, mangrove is protected from cyclones and it is protected from storm surges and high tides. Okay, and they prevented these buttress roots of mangrove prevented from falling. And there is a mangrove can limit salt intake because of its impermeable roots. The roots of mangrove are impermeable, it does not allow salt to percolate through it, right? And also mangrove have a thick waxy leaves, and because of this what happens is that the stomatal opening, the poral opening on the leaves is very minimal, and this reduces the water loss and this minimizes the salt absorption in the roots, in the leaves, right? And the reproduction, for reproduction, this tree, this is the viviparous mode of reproduction. This means in this tree itself, the seedlings, they attach to the tree and they germinate fully in the tree, right? And when these seedlings germinate into tiny mangrove plants, it drops off from the tree itself and they start floating on the water level. Okay, so this is a mode of adaptation as seen in mangroves. Now let's see the global distribution of mangrove. In this map, this is only important for you that you should know that the maximum or the highest concentration of maximum or the maximum area which is taken by mangroves is in Asia. Okay, Asia is followed by Africa and Northern America. Okay, so this hierarchy is given above. And also, if we talk about country, Indonesia has the highest, about the largest global area under mangrove, right? Now, if we talk about the distribution of mangrove in India, as per the latest State of Forest Report 2021, mangrove cover in India is around 4,992 square kilometer, and they constitute 0.15% of the total area of the India. And the statewide distribution cover, the West Bengal tops the statewide distribution of mangrove, which is followed by Gujarat, Andaman and Nicobar, right? These three states are important for you. And now let's talk. In this article, the article was regarding Sundarban, right? And let's quickly see what is Sundarban. Sundarban is the largest delta in the world, right? Sundarban is the largest delta in the world, and it is formed on the banks. It is the delta which is formed by river Ganga and river Brahmaputra, right? So the total area of Sundarban is around 10,000 square kilometer. Roughly 40% of this area is present in India and 60% of this area is present in Bangladesh, right? And Sundarbans are the largest mangrove forest in the world. These are located in the delta of river Ganges and Brahmaputra. And Sundarban Tiger Reserve is an important tiger reserve and a critical tiger habitat in this Sundarban Delta, right? And we know that Sundarbans are a biological hotspot, right? And because of which this is also a United Nations World Heritage Site, and it is also classified under UNESCO Biosphere Reserves, right? So they naturally host a range of enormous biodiversity of flora and fauna. Some important species which are found here are Royal Bengal tiger, elephants, python. Apart from this, then it also houses critically endangered northern river terrapin, which is a turtle, right? Endangered Irrawaddy dolphin and vulnerable fishing cat. Okay, so these are some of the species which are present in Sundarban. Okay, now let's quickly see what are the importance of Sundarbans, right? What is the importance of Sundarbans, or what is the importance basically of mangrove forest? We are talking about mangrove forest. What are the importance of mangrove forest? The first thing is that mangrove forest, they act as a shield or a natural barriers against storm surges, right? Against cyclones, against high tides, and these roots of these mangrove trees, they slow down the speed of these waves, and because of which it prevents coastal erosion, it prevents the risk of floods and it minimizes the damage to people and infrastructure, right? It acts as a shield or barrier to slow down the speed of the waves. Another thing is the mangrove forest, they act as carbon sinks, right? The roots of this mangrove ecosystem acts as a carbon sink and has an enormous carbon sequestration potential, right? It is said that they hold up to 4 times carbon as compared to the forest ecosystems like temperate and boreal forest, right? And it also hosts enormous coastal biodiversity, as this can be seen by the presence of a large number of flora and fauna which are native to Sundarbans, right? Apart from this, it also supports associated ecosystems such as grass beds and coral reefs. Apart from it, Sundarbans has a huge economic potential, and this can be seen by as it being a source of biomass, fuel, food, medicinal properties for the medicinal uses for the people living there, and because of its aesthetic nature, and it has also enormous tourism potential, right? And another thing is that Sundarban, the roots of the mangrove trees, right? They act as a natural water filter and they improve the water quality. They also trap sediments and pollutants from runoff before these sediments pass on to the Bay of Bengal, right? So we saw that because of enormous importance these mangrove forests hold, so there should be efforts in the country for the conservation of mangroves, which are susceptible to damage. And this such kind of damage can be due to large scale expansion for construction, because the land area is limited and there is a large scale encroachment of the mangrove areas, right? And due to construction of dams, and because of which there is a large influx of sediments in these mangrove forests, and these are also detrimental to these forests, right? And because of there are certain effluents, industrial effluents untreated, which are being disposed of to these mangrove forest ecosystem, which are detrimental to their growth, right? And in that case, because owing to their importance im- enormous economic and ecological importance, there should be efforts in the country in order to conserve the mangrove ecosystem in the country, right? So in the PDF, I have written some, you have been given some certain initiatives of which India is a part for the conservation of mangroves in the country, right? So this was all for today. And if you have any doubts, you can ask me. I am live for 2 more minutes. India is a part. Okay. What is NASA's Psyche mission? What is NASA's Psyche mission? Psyche mission is a recent mission which was launched by NASA in October 2023. Okay. So, what is Psyche? Psyche, Psyche basically. Psyche is a spacecraft which has been launched by NASA, and it is an asteroid to an asteroid, and which is present between Mars and Jupiter, right? And it is speculated that this asteroid, which is also by the same name Psyche, this asteroid is rich in minerals. Okay, so this is a mission which has been launched recently in October 2023 to this asteroid, and this will map the topography of this asteroid, right? And it is expected that this mission will reach this asteroid in the year 2029, and it will map the economic potential of this asteroid, and it will also it would also find clues to the evolution of how these asteroids evolved, and this may also give clues to the evolution of life forms in Earth, right? So this is a mission by NASA which has been recently launched. Ma'am, there is a request. Ma'am, request to discuss prelims concept before prelim question. Okay, next time I would surely integrate it. And now I can't find any other questions from your side. Okay, then this is end of the session. Thank you.